Hey guys, what are you well today? So yeah, first of all, just want to say Merry Christmas to everyone, and yeah, just hope you're having a great holiday. And yeah, no, this will be my last video of 2020. It's been a weird year in a sense of, what's happened with COVID and everything, but, we've been lucky enough to see a lot of rugby, especially towards the end of the year with, with the Autumn Nations and the Tri-Nations, so that's also come to good use. And yeah, this video will be essentially, a prediction, you could say, a very early prediction of the 2023 World Cup that's being hosted in France. And yeah, I'm doing this only because, we recently found out, the start of, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we found out, the actual results of what happened and, of the actual draw. And yeah, there was a lot of tough groups, and I just thought it would be a good chance and opportunity just to give you my opinion on what I think will be like the knockout stages and who might actually win the World Cup. This is a very early prediction, and I definitely want to see you guys commenting on the video. From the last video, there was a lot of comments, and I truly appreciate that. I mean, I try to get to all of you and just hopefully respond to your comments. And yeah, just definitely comment below if you disagree or if you agree with some of my opinions, and if you think that someone should have been, left out, or someone should have, or if you think someone actually should win the World Cup. Just comment below. I definitely want to hear your opinions. So yeah, just going off the knockout stages, I'll just tell you who I think will win each group individually. So if you look at the group stages for Group A, I do think New Zealand will come up on top, and I think France will come up in second as the runner-up. For Group B, I'm saying that South Africa will come first within that group, and there's going to be a shock in the system, and I actually think that Scotland will tip Ireland and actually get into the quarterfinals. So that's going to be a huge one for them. So I think they'll become runner-up of that Group B. And yeah, with Group C, I think it's the same group. So I think the only switch I'm really going to make within that group is that I'm actually going to say Australia will actually top that group, and then that Wales will come second. That's my prediction on that. And then yeah, with the last one, I'm going to say that England will obviously top the group for Group D, and I think Argentina will tip Japan. That might come as a shock, but I think closer to the time that will become more of a reality in a sense. But yeah, just with that, you have the 4 quarterfinals here. I mean, you can see it like right here. And yeah, no, if I had to say who will win each one of them, I mean, if you look at quarterfinal 1, I mean, it's between Australia and Argentina, and that's a very good quarterfinal. Both Southern Hemisphere teams, and recently, both games between them within the Tri-Nations were ended in a draw, which was surprising in a sense, and it just shows you how competitive those two teams are really, and how close they are at this moment. Obviously this might be Australia or Argentina might, be way separate to each other, and one might be doing way better within the next few years. But at the moment, both of them are pretty even, so that's going to be a very tough draw. And if I had to say who will go through, I think I would edge it to Australia, just purely on the basis of I think they have more players who will make a impact for that team. And I think a lot of, they have a lot of young guys who will actually gain a lot of experience for the next few years. So I think they'll just, I think they'll pip it in that point. But yeah, for the second quarterfinal, between South Africa and France, that's going to be a very good quarterfinal. Probably the most, intriguing quarterfinal out of all the quarterfinals, to be honest. And as an SA fan, this might come as a surprise, but I actually think the host will beat the champions. I truly believe that France will actually beat the South, will beat the Springboks. And that might come as a shock, because obviously, at this point, we haven't actually seen the Springboks play, so we can't really judge them on how well they're actually doing, up until last year's World Cup, because that's the last time they've actually played. But just looking at France, particularly within the Autumn Nations, and you can also say the Six Nations early on within the year, they were incredible to watch. I mean, they pulled out some shock performances, with that, beating England at home, beating Wales away, very good game there. And then within the Autumn Nations, doing very well, and actually putting like a second and third, team really, in a sense, and almost beating England within extra time. So France are definitely moving in the right direction. So I do think that France will actually have the edge over South Africa, and obviously they're playing at home, so that comes as a huge advantage. As that's a home advantage towards France. So yeah, I actually think France will tip the Springboks. I mean, that might be a serious. That's my opinion, and I hate to say it as a Springbok fan, but I just don't think the Springboks will improve as much as they did, throughout the last World Cup, and I just don't think they'll be able to maintain that level of, just sure physicality and maybe just ability to score tries against very good opposition. We'll have to wait and see. But I just think that France will be too good. So yeah, for quarterfinal three, it's a very interesting one in a sense where you have two teams who are very, you could say very, one's doing very good at the moment and one's doing shockingly bad, and that you have England versus Wales, and that would be a very interesting quarterfinal actually. And what I love about this quarterfinal is that even though I'm predicting that this will be the quarterfinal for number three, Wales at the moment, they aren't in the best of form. I think we can all agree with that. But what I love about this and what they've done with this draw is that Wales is actually in a better position, because if they were to improve in the next few years, then actually they might have a chance in actually beating England in that quarterfinal. Because at the moment, they're not doing well. So they have a lot of time actually to progress and actually learn, to analyze the different teams they'll play with in the group stages. And, particularly, England, who are most likely going to be their opposition within the quarterfinals. So it's a very mixed bag in a sense, but also it brings a lot of positives, you could say, for this Welsh team. So I think that this will be a good good match to watch. But I think it's kind of an obvious that I think I'm going to go with with England with this, and I just think they're too strong. I truly think they're too strong. I mean, particularly within their lineouts and scrums, I think they'll have an edge over Wales within those areas. And Mario Itoje just being himself, he's just gonna smash everyone, and Johnny May will be at his best. Watson as well, Owen Farrell. I mean, they have all these guys they can rely on. I just think they'll be too strong for Wales. So I think that England will win that quarterfinal. And yeah, for the last quarterfinal, I'm saying that New Zealand would be the top of that, will make it, and then they'll be playing against Scotland. So that'll be a very interesting game in the sense where a lot of people might have predicted that it might be New Zealand versus Ireland, but I've actually gone with Scotland to tip Ireland. So yeah, they'll be facing the All Blacks within the quarterfinal four. And yeah, no, it'll be an interesting game. Obviously, we haven't seen a lot of the. I haven't seen a lot of games between Scotland and New Zealand in particular. I know they're playing one, in the future, so that'll be good to see. I think Scotland is coming to the All Blacks next year, so that'll be a good match to watch. But other than that, I mean, it's a weird game in the sense where Scotland, I think, are steadily progressing. And throughout the next few years, I won't be surprised if they actually come third or second within one of these Six Nations. I mean, that might be a stretch, but I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest, but we'll have to wait on seeing that. And yeah, no, just with Scotland, with the amount of players they have with Jamie Ritchie, they have Finn Russell, Stuart Hogg. They have so many reliable players in that sense where I think they would tip it and go into the quarterfinal. But yeah, I mean, what's coming next. I think the All Blacks are too strong. Straight up, the All Blacks will be way too strong for Scotland. I think it'll be another performance like they did against Ireland within that quarterfinal. They'll just eliminate, in a sense, we'll put that politely, eliminate the Scots within that quarterfinal. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if for some reason, I don't know, like Will Jordan or Richard Wong gets like a hat-trick of tries within that match. I wouldn't be surprised at all. But yeah, anyway, that's kind of it with the quarterfinals. So now moving on to the semis. So now for semifinal number one, it would be Australia versus France. Now this would be a very interesting semifinal in the sense where there's a lot of history within that final, in a way that they've played many times. With that obviously that 1991? I think it was 1991 World Cup final. I might be wrong with that. Where it's 1999. Yeah, 1999. Sorry, but that's they have a lot of history within that sense, and it's a good rivalry there. If I had to base this on right now, I mean, I'd say France would probably have the edge, but you never know. France and Australia are two teams who actually have a lot of potential within their sides. They have a lot of blossoming, a lot of players who are actually rising in potential. Like that's the best way I can say. There's a lot of potential within a lot of players, particularly for the Wallabies, for example. They have the likes of Harry Wilson. They have the likes of gosh, who else? They have Tate McDermott. They have Taniela Tupou. Great, I love to watch him. He just smashes everyone. Who else? They have. There's a list of players I can go through. They have Jordan Bataya. They have Hunter Basami. They have. Yeah, there's a ton of players they essentially have. Noah Lassalle. I mean, the list goes on for Australia, and that's why I would consider them to be. They would be a very strong opponent to France, and same for France. They have a lot of good players. Charles Avillon. They have Dupont, obviously. Nantamak. They have, Teddy Thomas. Like, they have a lot of good players. And if you're looking at depth within the side, this might surprise a lot of people, but I'd actually say Australia has more depth within their side. But if you're talking about, like, their starting team, like, actual starting team, I think France has a slightly better starting team than the Wallabies. And if you're looking at player to player, I mean, like, that's the way I'm looking at it, from player to player. And yeah, I would say the French would actually beat the Wallabies, which is, in a sense, you wouldn't think that would be a surprise now, but just wait and see. I bet that would be a very tight game in a sense of who would actually win that game on points. But yeah, I'm going to say France will actually go through within that game. So yeah, for semifinal number 2, it would be the the reunited sides of the semifinal within obviously Japan in 2019, and yeah, this would be a cracker of a game. You have New Zealand versus England. I mean, what else can you say? That's a massive match. I mean, you could say somewhat history there. You could go off to the 1995 Rugby World Cup when John Olamu scored a hat-trick of tries against the English. You go to England, recently, just beating the All Blacks, and yeah, there's a lot of good games between both those sides, and obviously it's going to be a difficult match for any of those two sides. It's tough to call who will actually win that game. I mean, it's just so difficult. But yeah, I actually can't decide who would actually win that game, because if you're looking at recent form, the All Blacks, they won the Tri-Nations recently. England have won the Autumn Nations. They're pretty much the top of their hemispheres. And if you look at like squad depth, I'd give it to New Zealand. But if you're looking at this current point, who has the starting 15, you can essentially say who it is. I'd probably give it to England, because New Zealand are still trying to figure out what their starting 15 really is. So that's kind of one negative you could say towards the All Blacks. But you know what? I actually think England will pip them again. I truly I want to say New Zealand. Like, would New Zealand win? Yeah, you know what? I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to say England will pip New Zealand, and I guarantee you it'll be like up by 2 or 3 points. That's what I'm probably predicting. But it's going to be a tight match. Trust me, that'll be definitely a tight match to watch. But yeah, that's kind of it with the semifinals now. So moving on to the bronze final, which is obviously for third place, and you have from my estimations you would have Australia versus New Zealand. So it would be a Southern Hemisphere clash, obviously. Bledisloe Cup. They normally play within that, and straight away, I mean, I'm not gonna make this very slow. All Blacks will win that game. Simple, done and dusted. I think they'll win that game by at least, I'll say, by at least 15 points. That's kind of my prediction in that area, but I might be wrong with that. It could be a tight game. You never know. The Wallabies actually might shock the All Blacks and win the bronze final. But if I had to really say who'll win that game, yeah, I'd probably give it to the All Blacks within that bronze final. And to be honest, I mean, I don't think a lot of people watch that game, but it's one of those games where you're just like, you're pretty much just ending the tournament. It's good to end the tournament on a high. So I think the All Blacks will definitely try to do that. And yeah, I think they'll win the bronze final. So yeah, moving on to the final. So the final is obviously against France versus England, and yeah, I've said this for a long while actually, that I think that these two sides would actually meet within the final. I mean, it kind of actually works out perfectly in a sense of how the knockout stages have actually worked, from all of this here. And yeah, I mean, if I had to say who will actually win the game, it's going to be very close in a sense. Obviously, if you look at the Autumn Nations and you look at the Six Nations, France got the edge over England within that, and then within the Autumn Nations, England got the edge over France. So it's very they have wins over each other in 2020. But if I had to say closer to the time, it personally for me, I truly believe that France will actually progress. Like, I think they're just going to keep on improving. That might be a shock to everyone, and how can you improve from what the state they are at the moment, because they're actually a brilliant team to watch. But I truly believe they'll actually get a lot better, and I think they'll have they'll start to have more like squad depth within their side, and I think they'll be able to like rotate all the players who you wouldn't think would actually be that good, but actually make an instant impact off the bench. You know, like a player just to mind that I always think of making an instant impact is Tenio Tupa for the Wallabies. Like straight away, Dave Rennie knows how to use Tenio Tupa, and I think France will have a lot of those players within the next 2 years, I'd say, who they'll actually, gain into like within the bench and make an instant impact off the bench. So that's why I think France will really have the edge over England. But if you're talking about like wanting revenge and actually wanting revenge over 2019, even though England didn't obviously play France, but just they would want revenge in the sense of where they want to win the World Cup. They lost that opportunity within 2019. A lot of people say that the final was essentially England versus New Zealand, and then England just completely forgot they were playing the Springboks. But it's one of those finals where it's going to be so close in a sense where I actually think both teams will probably get one try each. But if I had to give it to who would actually win the World Cup, I would. This might come as a surprise, but I'm going to give it to. I just think. I'm going to give it to England. I think England will win the World Cup. It's going to be tight, and obviously I want to back the home nation because obviously France are going to be at home, but I mean, yeah, I think England will win. That's my final prediction. I think England will win this game, and I think they'll win it by 3 points. I'm going to say around 3 points. But yeah, that's kind of it with the video. I just hope you guys enjoyed. Definitely comment below if you guys disagree or if you guys agree with my decisions. Obviously this is a very early prediction, so don't get too mad at me if if a lot of these teams actually improve or just don't improve at all. We'll have to wait and see. And I'll definitely make the same video closer to the time. But yeah, just again, just want to say hope you guys have a great Christmas and a good holiday. And yeah, just it's been a weird 2020, but hopefully 2021 will be a lot better. So just like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.